Welcome to the fantasy audiobook, Konoha, Creating Infinite Bloodline from Daily Settlement. Chapter 61. After these words fell, Naoki was just stunned, and then he kept silent. It's not that he didn't believe what Orochimaru said, but he also had an inexplicable confidence in Ishigamihara. Apart from anything else, just in terms of learning ability, Naoki has never seen anyone who can compare with Ishigamihara. It seems that because Orochimaru's words are too shocking, Tsunade, who is still in a depressed state, became interested at this time and asked, "Who is that kid?" Naoki took the initiative to speak. "Sister, that guy is Ishigamihara, very powerful," and he opened the Byakugan and Sharingan at the same time. As he told her story, Tsunade roughly understood that she was not completely ignorant of Konoha's affairs at the front line. The news from the rear was mixed with some information she needed. For example, she had been notified in advance of the change of Jinchuriki before, and there was some news about Ishigamihara. It was just that at that time, Tsunade's attention was all on the news that her grandmother was about to die, and she was not paying attention to this time, so she didn't care much. Now she heard it, and she finally reacted. But that's all. After Tsunade experienced the death of her grandmother and the tragic death of her lover, this series of blows, now she only has one breath left to hold on without escaping. But looking at her, she has lost the pride and talent of being a ninja. It can't be said that she is no different from a useless person, but it's not much different. Orochimaru saw this, and it was precisely because of this that he gave such an order to Ishigamihara, just to arouse some of Tsunade's spirit. Handing such a dangerous person to a young man, as a Jonin of Konoha, one of the three ninjas, one of the frontline commanders, and the granddaughter of the first generation, she should be more excited because of her own responsibility, right? But the result, to be honest, Orochimaru was very disappointed, but he understood it. So, Orochimaru just nodded and said to Naoki, "From now on, your role is to take good care of Tsunade." "Yes, Master Orochimaru." Rope Tree knew the priorities, and although he also wanted to do his part in the war, his sister needed his help more now, so he didn't dwell on this matter. As for Orochimaru, he didn't say anything more to Tsunade, because he had more important things to do. The name of the three ninjas originated from the last battle between the three ninjas and Hanzo of the Salamander. Rather than saying that the name of the three ninjas is an honor, it is better to say that it is the result of the enemy's mercy and giving up on depriving the three of them of their lives. For Orochimaru, this is basically equivalent to a shame. And in that battle, Orochimaru was injured and eventually returned to the village to recuperate. The front line of the Rain country could only be handed over to Jiraiya and Tsunade. But what Orochimaru didn't expect was that after returning this time, Jiraiya was seriously injured and Tsunade had lost his spirit, which made him equally difficult to accept. Originally the three were arranged to come to the battlefield of Rain country. In addition to resisting the enemy, the original intention of the top leaders or Sarutobi Hiruzen was to use the merits of the hidden Rain village to enhance the status and reputation of the three. Orochimaru and the other two were very clear about this. Even the fact that Hanzo of the Salamander did not kill the three in the initial battle may have been due to his concerns about Konoha, and it could be said that he vindicated the three by accident. But now, as long as Hanzo of the Salamander is not stupid, he must know that this is an opportunity to defeat Konoha's frontline forces in Rain country in one fell swoop. Orochimaru didn't even need to think too much to know that what would greet all the Konoha ninjas in the camp next would definitely be a surprise attack from the hidden Rain village. Therefore, Orochimaru did not communicate too much with Tsunade, and then just looked at Jiraiya, and directly took over the right to command the front line and began to make various arrangements. And on the other side, before leaving the camp, Ishigamihara first took a camp defense map, a map of this place, and some previous information about Yugikure. After a quick check, he already had a rough idea. He came with Orochimaru and brought with him the character scroll of this trip. The people in the camp would naturally cooperate with him, so this point will not be mentioned. After doing all this, Ishigamihara went straight out of the camp and headed northwest, where the Rain country is located, and it is also the last possible direction of the Yugikure raid. During the whole process, Ishigamihara's perception was open to the maximum. Within a radius of 2 kilometers, almost every chakra fluctuation was clearly sensed by Ishigamihara. In fact, Ishigamihara's perception can now be fully opened to a degree of about 5 kilometers, but in order to conduct a more detailed investigation, this range was specifically fixed. Set at 2 kilometers, this way, he really discovered some clues. Ishigamihara looked in one direction, his eyes flickering, but he did not move, but hid. He was waiting, because he had sensed the chakra fluctuations of the people from the rain village, just over a kilometer away. This distance was very close to the Konoha camp, which meant that the rain village must have a plan to attack the Konoha camp. So Ishigamihara didn't need to do too much at the moment, he just needed to sit back and wait. After all, the order he received was to be alert and defend. In Ishigamihara's view, the reason why Orochimaru gave him such an order was that he knew some things about himself. For example, Ishigami didn't do it secretly when he learned would release in the early morning of that day. Orochimaru would definitely find some clues if he was interested. Just like the Byakugan and Sharingan, Ishigamihara didn't intend to hide his wood release. Some things might have unexpected gains if they were put out in the open. "Aren't you nervous, kid?" Uchiha Izuna asked. This kind of question was not the first time Uchiha Izuna asked, and Ishigamihara's answer was not the first time. "Not nervous, just a little excited. Hee, you little devil." Uchiha Izuna's voice sounded again. "Don't die, I want to see how far you can go with wood release." "What you'll see." On the other side, in the direction of the northern grass country, a figure walked out of the dark cave, glanced at the sky, and then disappeared in a flash. What an interesting guy. He was able to find the traces of white Zetsu. It is really worth going to see in person. The main reason why Uchiha Madara came out was naturally Ishigamihara. He had both the Byakugan and the Sharingan bloodline, which was something he had never heard of even with his knowledge. Such an existence could be called a miracle in the ninja world. Although the Hyuga and Uchiha were not mortal enemies, they had fought many times during the Warring States period, so one can imagine their relationship. In this case, it is almost impossible to give birth to a descendant with the blood of both clans. But this situation happened now, especially since the person who appeared had many mysteries on him, which naturally attracted the attention of Uchiha Madara. At this time, Uchiha Madara had just transplanted the Mangekyo and was also working hard to find his next target. When a strange person like Ishigamihara appeared, the first thing Uchiha Madara thought of was whether he could use him. In this way, Uchiha Madara's trip naturally had a different purpose. In this regard, Ishigamihara had foresight and naturally anticipated it, but at this time, Ishigamihara's attention was not on Uchiha Madara. He had discovered the number of hidden ninja chakras was small, but they were scattered, which meant that they had at least been in ambush, or had been hiding here for some time. In this way, Ishigamihara could easily imagine that the situation at the Konoha camp must have been known to the Hidden Rain long ago. Ishigamihara thought for a moment, and then he noticed it. His figure flashed, and then he appeared on a thick tree branch. "Who?" The man hiding behind the tree branch was shocked and threw out a kunai subconsciously, and the man tried to dodge it at the first moment. Ding! Ishigamihara flicked his finger, and the chakra on his fingertips flashed, and the kunai was knocked out and nailed to the tree trunk nearby. "Don't be nervous." Ishigamihara pointed to his forehead protector and said to the man, "I am here with Lord Orochimaru." The startled man was naturally a ninja from Konoha. He was hiding here as a sentry and was always on guard, so he was naturally alert. However, after seeing Ishigamihara's forehead protector, he relaxed a little. After seeing Ishigamihara's appearance clearly, he was immediately surprised. It was really that Ishigamihara was too handsome, and this kind of handsomeness was famous throughout Konoha. Combined with his age, it was not difficult to guess Ishigamihara's identity. "You are the most handsome man in Konoha?" the man asked subconsciously. Ahem. Even someone as indifferent as Ishigamihara couldn't help but dry cough at this time. This name was too shameful for him. Every time he heard this name, it would always remind Ishigamihara of some bad things, especially the crazy behaviors of those women every time they saw him when he was a child. It was simply too hard to hold back. Otherwise, why is Ishigamihara so cold? There is a reason for this. If he had a gentler personality, I'm afraid those women would be able to cleanse him with their saliva. I am Ishigamihara, and I am here to guard the camp under the order of Lord Orochimaru. I found 8 people from the Rain Village 2 kilometers away, which should be 2 ninja teams. You take this message back and ask Lord Orochimaru to make early preparations and take precautions in advance. I guess that in the next few days, the Sand Village will definitely launch a surprise attack on the camp. The man was shocked when he heard this and asked hurriedly, "Where are the people?" Ishigamihara said, "Don't alert the enemy for the time being, and wait for Orochimaru's order." I understand. The man was also very straightforward. He left without hesitation and was anxious to go back to report the news. After the others left, Ishigamihara simply sat cross-legged on a tree branch and waited quietly. Orochimaru's order did not surprise Ishigamihara. He did not ask Ishigamihara to eliminate the two Rain Village teams, but instead asked someone to bring Ishigamihara a new defense map. In this way, Ishigamihara understood Orochimaru's intention, which was obviously to lure the Rain Village team to take the initiative. Ishigamihara thought that the rear camp must have made corresponding deployments at this time. It is true that the camp is in a low spirit, but this kind of thing will definitely change with the arrival of Orochimaru and Rope Tree. Especially Rope Tree's identity can play an unexpected role at this time. These were beyond Ishigamihara's consideration, because as time went on, Ishigamihara became more and more alert. It was because that special chakra appeared again in the surroundings, and it was very hidden. Even with Ishigamihara's perception, the sense was very vague. He could only vaguely sense the existence of the other party, but could not accurately determine the exact location of the other party. In this way, Ishigamihara naturally had guesses about these newly appeared chakras, and estimated that they should be white Zetsu. There was more than one new white Zetsu. In Ishigamihara's perception, there were more than a dozen similar chakras, scattered within a 2-kilometer range, quietly hidden. With so many white Zetsu appearing, Ishigamihara didn't even have to guess, he could know that Uchiha Madara must care about him a lot. Time passed as Ishigamihara was alert, and 2 days had passed in the blink of an eye. During these 2 days, Ishigamihara walked around the area and had a good idea of the surrounding environment. And the reality was just as he expected. There was indeed a big movement in Yugakure. There were quite a few Yugakure ninjas who broke into Ishigamihara's perception range, probably hundreds of them, coming from the north and heading directly towards the Konoha camp. Ishigamihara raised the corners of his mouth slightly, raised 2 fingers, and then looked in one direction. There was suddenly a flame shooting into the sky, smoke and dust billowing, followed by a rumbling explosion. Swish! The next moment, Ishigamihara's figure disappeared, and he appeared dozens of meters away. After a few rises and falls, he headed in that direction. However, in the process of the action, Ishigamihara's eyes moved, and he seemed to look in one direction, and at the same time he was asking Uchiha Izuna in his mind, "Have you noticed a force? Is there any special chakra fluctuation?" Uchiha Izuna answered simply, "You blocked my chakra, I can't feel it." Upon hearing this, Ishigamihara unlocked Uchiha Izuna's chakra control, but the answer he gave him surprised him. "I didn't feel anything. Are you too nervous?" Ishigamihara nodded slightly, but his pace increased. "Are you nervous?" "Maybe," Uchiha Izuna said. "The movement here must have been noticed by the camp behind." "Isn't this exactly what you planned?" Ishigamihara said. "The ninjas from Yugakure are easy to deal with, but if Hanzo comes in person, it will still be a lot of pressure for the people here." "You still care about this?" Uchiha Izuna was surprised. "No, you misunderstood. I was just afraid that my fight with Hanzo would be disturbed by others." Soon, Ishigamihara found the team of Yugakure, and the battle started at that moment. Swoosh! A sharp blade flashed in the air, breaking through the air and making a sharp whistling sound. The head of the leader of the Rain Hidden Ninja team did not react at all, and blood rushed up to the sky like a fountain. The next moment, the remaining people of the Rain Hidden Ninja team finally reacted and subconsciously wanted to counterattack in the direction of the sound. Kunai and Shuriken flew together, but they had already lost the target of the enemy. Enemy attack! One person screamed and turned around to look for the enemy, but the next moment he felt a sudden pain in his chest. He looked down and saw that his chest had been pierced by a kunai. There was still a shadow in his sight, but when he reacted, the shadow had already disappeared. The man could only fall to the ground in despair, and blood soon dyed the ground red. "Ah, over there." Someone finally saw the enemy. The sound here also attracted the attention of others the moment the battle started. For a while, People from Yuyan rushed to this direction from all directions. The number of people in the Yuyan raiding team this time was not small, but they were not gathered together like a group march. The existence of ninjas destined that the ninja war could not be the same as Ishigamihara's previous life. Ninjas would be more powerful only if they were dispersed. In the field, 2 people from the Yuyan team were killed almost instantly. After the remaining 2 people reacted, they did not think about escaping at the first time, but about chasing the enemy. So after discovering Ishigamihara's figure, they chased after him directly. This place is a small forest with trees of different heights and not too dense, but this environment is extremely suitable for assassinations for ninjas. Ishigamihara's figure suddenly appeared behind a tree, there was a slight pause, and then it disappeared again. The next moment, a man was chasing after him and making a speech. Just as he was about to make a move, a dark spell appeared under his feet, and his body suddenly froze. Not good. This was the man's last thought, because the next moment, the tree trunk behind him exploded violently. Boom! The loud noise shook all around, attracting everyone's attention. Ishigamihara's figure was like a ghost, his eyes scanning everywhere, his terrifying dynamic vision made him look like a shadow, disappearing in an instant, and every move he made was extremely crisp and decisive, and his moves were extremely sharp. Puff! With the short blade in his hand extended horizontally, Ishigamihara's figure crossed with a young man from Yuyan, a handful of blood fell, and Ishigamihara disappeared without a trace. In the past, Uchiha Izuna might have commented on this, but as time goes by, Ishigamihara's fighting rhythm has already matured, and what he shows now is so amazing that even Uchiha Izuna is amazed. Too beautiful, too perfect. Uchiha Izuna, who shares Ishigamihara's vision, sighed in his heart at this moment. It was because Ishigamihara's fighting rhythm was so perfect that he couldn't find any faults with his vision. The more he watched, the more excited Uchiha Izuna became, but at the same time he felt a kind of pain, because he couldn't fight with such an existence. For an Uchiha like Uchiha Izuna, this kind of thing is as uncomfortable as an old gourmet seeing delicious food but being unable to eat it. As a guest living in Ishigamihara's body, there is a certain connection between the chakras of the two, so Ishigamihara can more or less feel what Uchiha Izuna transmits through his chakra, emotions. The corners of his mouth curled up unconsciously. This feeling of being recognized by a combat expert is not bad. Dang! Ishigamihara blocked a kunai casually, released the seal with one hand, and a flame rose up, turning into a fire dragon, and instantly rushed forward. Boom! The fire dragon exploded and burst when it hit the ground, the shock wave spread in all directions, and smoke and dust rose with it. Dang dang dang! Another kunai and shuriken were blocked by Ishigamihara, and Ishigamihara's figure had disappeared in the smoke and dust, making the surrounding rain ninjas who were almost surrounded lose their target. The battlefield was already noisy at this moment, with the shouting and fighting of the rain ninjas, the roar of ninjutsu, and the screams of kunai and shuriken, all gathered in the smoke and dust. The concentrated fire attack of dozens of people would be extremely terrifying in any place, and even a ninja at the level of Kage would have to be careful to deal with it. Ishigamihara's response method was very simple. He just performed a technique. Fire style. Great fire extinguishment. Boom! The raging flames instantly blew away the smoke and dust, and as Ishigamihara turned his body, the surroundings turned into a blazing sea of fire. The raging flames were like rolling waves, spreading wildly in all directions. The flames soared to a height of 20 to 30 meters, and the power in an instant made the scene quiet. Swish, swish, swish. Countless sounds of breaking through the air rang out around them at this moment. It was the Yuyan who were terrified and quickly moved away with the instant body technique. Such a powerful ninjutsu was really beyond the scope of their existence. How can he be so strong? What kind of technique is this? Is he from Konoha? We can't just let this go on. Let's use ninjutsu together and definitely kill this guy. Shouts arose everywhere, especially when many Yuyan saw their companions being engulfed by flames. Their unwillingness and anger could no longer be hidden. Water style. Flood rush. A muffled voice sounded in the distance, as if it came through a mask. Then, a huge wave rushed in from the forest 40 or 50 meters away. Almost at the first sight, it engulfed the blazing and terrifying flames, and instantly filled with large pieces of steam and white mist, blowing in all directions. Ishigamihara frowned, and the moment he jumped up, he made seals with his hands one after another, and held his breath as soon as he landed on the water. In his mind, Uchiha Izuna's voice sounded. Someone is coming, and he is not simple. Also, be careful with the water, it is poisonous. Ishigamihara knew who was coming without Uchiha Izuna telling him. It could not be anyone else except Hanzo, otherwise Ishigamihara would not have held his breath at the first moment. Sure enough, a person came on the water from a distance, breaking through the steam and white smoke, and appeared in Ishigamihara's sight. He was wearing a standard ninja vest of Yuyin, a sword cloak, holding a hammer and sickle, with a gloomy look in his eyes and a murderous aura. The little devil from Konoha can actually do this. It's amazing. Ishigamihara said nothing, just stared at the other party quietly. In his mind, Uchiha Izuna spoke again, leave him to me. Ishigamihara could feel Uchiha Izuna's boiling fighting spirit, and after thinking about it, he did not refuse. Yes, but you only have 10 minutes. Are demigods in the ninja world strong? Of course they are. As an absolute hardliner among the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Izuna, who fought with the Senju clan until his death, would naturally show the desire to fight with such a strong man in the ninja world. At this moment, Ishigamihara gave up the dominance of his body and closed his eyes slightly. The next moment, Ishigamihara opened his eyes, one white and one red, and his two eyes were particularly special, but the real weird thing was his left eye. The white eye was covered by Uchiha Izuna's chakra, and gradually revealed a scarlet color. Almost in the blink of an eye, it turned into a Sharingan, and the pair of Sharingans turned into a kaleidoscope of triangular lock patterns in the next moment. This is the Sharingan belonging to Uchiha Izuna. After more than 40 years, it appeared again in the ninja world. At the same time, in a forest more than 20 kilometers away, Uchiha Madara suddenly raised his head with an expression of disbelief. This is Izuna's chakra. How is it possible? Uchiha Madara's expression was extremely shocked, doubtful, ecstatic, and mostly bewildered. With his chakra perception ability, this judgment was not wrong, especially since that was his younger brother, the closest relative who had accompanied him for the first half of his life. The chakra was sinister and ruthless, so it was absolutely impossible to be wrong. How could this happen? Uchiha Madara was frozen in place, not knowing what to do for a moment. He was the Shira of the ninja world, and he and Hashirama Senju were the ones who could suppress the entire ninja world, but now he felt timid and confused. Taking a deep breath, Uchiha Madara's expression suddenly became fierce. No matter who it is, if anyone dares to blaspheme Izuna's soul, I will kill him. While muttering to himself, Uchiha Madara disappeared from the spot and quickly rushed towards the source of the chakra fluctuations. On the other side, in the battlefield, the waves surged. It was an ordinary B-level water-style ninjutsu, but on Hanzo, it was as powerful as a forbidden technique. The surrounding waves can be regarded as a small lake, and this piece of lake water did not spread directly, but was fixed within a certain range, which was quite strange. What people care most about is the wisps of mist floating in the lake, which is a light purple, which is obviously highly toxic. Fortunately, the ninjas of Yuyin were all wearing respirators like Hanzo, otherwise, it is hard to say. Just smelling the mist will cause poisoning and death. As for Ishigamihara, his whole body is burning with a light red chakra flame. That is the result of the chakra explosion to a certain extent. The poisonous air around him cannot get close to him at all. Even if he gets close, the toxins in it will be wiped out in an instant. At this time, Ishigamihara's body is controlled by Uchiha Izuna. With his experience, this toxicity is nothing. A strong man who grew up in the Warring States period will naturally not be troubled by such a small matter. Not far away, Hanzo of the Salamander was looking at the boy in front of him, but the change in Ishigamihara's eyes startled him slightly, especially the eyes with the triangular lock pattern, which made Hanzo of the Salamander vaguely uneasy. So that's it, this is the Mangekyo Sharingan. What a terrifying pair of eyes. How long has it been since they appeared in the ninja world? Saying this, Salamander Hanzo stared at Ishigamihara, his tone heavy. Kid, are you from the Uchiha clan? He. What responded to him was a series of low laughter, which was suppressed at first, and then gradually became louder, until finally Ishigamihara covered his forehead and roared to the sky, with a deep joy in his voice. That's the feeling, yes, that's the feeling of being alive, it's really great. After saying that, Ishigamihara lowered his head and also stared at Hanzo, carefully looking at his whole body, and then slowly raised the short blade in his hand. It can be seen that you should be an expert in swordsmanship. Do you want to warm up with swordsmanship first? Although he said so, Uchiha Izuna didn't give Hanzo the chance to choose, because the moment the voice fell, Ishigamihara's body had already rushed out. Swoosh! His momentum was like fire and as fast as thunder. It was just a simple sprint. Wherever he passed, a half-meter deep gully was broken, and waves were shaking. So fast, Hanzo's eyes condensed, and he raised his hand to make a diagonal slash. A cold light flashed across the sickle in his hand, and he chopped straight towards Ishigamihara. Dang! The short blade blocked the attack just right, and Ishigamihara's figure froze. Sparks flew where the short blade in his hand collided with the sickle. Bang! With a muffled sound, with the position of the two as the center of the circle, a wave of air surged, stirring up large waves, and the water surface was undulating with it. Tisk! Ishigamihara snorted coldly. Is it really because of age? Salamander Hanzo and Ishigamihara were wrestling. One was tall and the other was short. Even though Ishigamihara was no longer a weakling, he had not fully grown up after all. He was at a considerable disadvantage in terms of height. Strength was easy to say. The effect of the LV4 training skill had already made Ishigamihara's body much stronger than that of ordinary people. Especially with the effect of strengthening the body and strengthening the bones and muscles, it was even more incomparable to ordinary people. So when the two wrestled, Uchiha Izuna only felt that he was not tall enough and was a little bit tired. The young man in front of him was at a loss, but Hanzo suddenly opened his eyes with a hint of surprise, feeling that the strength of the young man in front of him could actually compete with his own. Thinking of this, Hanzo's eyes suddenly flashed with murderous intent, and he turned his wrist, thrust the sickle forward, and cut towards Ishigamihara's neck. Ishigamihara's reaction was even faster, and he leaned back and kicked towards Hanzo's waist with his toes. Bang! Bang! The sickle was blocked by the short knife again, and Ishigamihara's toes were held by Hanzo's other hand. I caught you. The salamander Hanzo was delighted, but he quickly let go of it the next moment. It was because the tip of Ishigamihara's toes suddenly burst into flames. Fire style. Dragon fire technique. Hanzo of the salamander narrowed his eyes slightly, and was even more surprised in his heart, because he didn't even notice when Ishigamihara completed the seal, which was simply unbelievable. Whoosh! A beam of fire shot up into the sky, and Hanzo of the salamander retreated and distanced himself from Ishigamihara. But the next moment, the water surface under his feet suddenly exploded, and Ishigamihara rushed out of it, with the short blade in his hand extended horizontally, heading straight for Hanzo of the salamander's neck, with a ruthless move and no mercy. Dang! 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 The sound of metal clashing rang out one after another, accompanied by sparks flying everywhere. The two had fought back and forth for more than a dozen times. During the whole process, Ishigamihara was extremely swift and his moves were crisp and neat. When the short blade slashed, his body movements were filled with an inexplicable beauty, which was wonderful. Sure enough, this is the style of the Uchiha. Hanzo Salamander has already made up his mind that the young man in front of him must be eliminated today. Inexplicably, Hanzo Salamander became more and more frightened as he fought, and even at a certain moment, his body felt a little cold. He couldn't imagine what would happen to the Hidden Rain village if such a young man grew up. A figure appeared behind a rough tree a few hundred meters away, staring at the battlefield, first frowning, and then a dazed look. Slanting robe slash, reverse cross slash, Ikimonji secret killing technique. These are all Izuna's swordsmanship. How is it possible? If it was still a little unbelievable before, then what was in front of him now was reality. Uchiha Madara even wondered if he was dazzled, otherwise why could he feel the chakra of his younger brother Izuna from a boy, and even see the same attack moves as Izuna? These, Uchiha Madara was too familiar with them. In his excitement, Uchiha Madara didn't even notice that he crushed the tree trunk at hand. His eyes were still staring straight at the boy who was fighting. Inexplicably, a figure appeared in front of his eyes, and that figure slowly began to merge with the boy. Izuna. In the field, above the water, Ishigamihara and Salamander Hanzo were fighting back and forth, and they were gradually surrounded by the people of Omegakure, waiting for Salamander Hanzo's order, and they would swarm up and kill the enemy. However, Salamander Hanzo did not give the order immediately, and it was difficult to find an opponent. This was not only true for Uchiha Izuna, but also for Salamander Hanzo. During this period of time, Salamander Hanzo had not completely lost the will to dominate the ninja world, and his pride was still there. He was not the old man in the later period who could use conspiracy with Shimura Danzo to harm people for the sake of power. Therefore, while Uchiha Izuna was enjoying the long-lost battle, Salamander Hanzo was also immersed in it. Water style. Tornado water explosion. Earth escape technique. Mud rushing technique. Combined ninjutsu. Tornado stream technique. After another fight, Hanzo of the Salamander swung his sickle and formed seals with both hands to perform ninjutsu. The water under his feet suddenly rolled up and turned into a water tornado, rushing forward madly. At the same time, the silt under the water surface shot out and merged into the water tornado, and at the same time clumps, making the water tornado look even bigger. From a distance, it looked like a mudslide wrapped in rocks and yellow mud, rushing towards where Ishigamihara was. The power of this combined ninjutsu is definitely higher than that of A-level ninjutsu. Just looking at the diameter of the tornado, which is more than 20 meters, it can be seen that this is definitely a ninjutsu with amazing group lethality. Seeing this scene, Ishigamihara, who was controlled by Uchiha Izuna, responded quickly and retreated rapidly to distance himself from the huge tornado, while also forming seals with both hands. If you look closely, it is not difficult to find that the appearance of his seals is almost exactly the same as that of Hanzo of the Salamander, and even 3 times faster in terms of speed. Combined ninjutsu. Tornado stream technique. The same water tornado, the same silt rolled into it, the same silt lumps together, and finally formed an identical huge tornado, with a sense of being the last to arrive, heading towards the huge tornado. Seeing this scene, both Hanzo and the others were shocked. The former was not so bad. After knowing that the enemy was Uchiha, he had expected that this scene might appear. After all, the Sharingan can copy the number of people, which is recognized by the ninja world. The other ninjas of Yuyan opened their mouths wide at this time. They could hardly believe the scene in front of them. The leader's combined ninjutsu was actually used by someone in the same way. This is a bit too shocking. At the same time, Uchiha Madara, who was hiding in the dark, was watching intently, not missing any details. After seeing this scene, his expression revealed joy. It is Izuna's habit to copy the ninjutsu used by the opponent with powerful chakra and insight, and then crush the enemy with the same ninjutsu, making the enemy despair. Uchiha Madara was reluctant to look away. Although he had never seen the young man, his various performances were enough for Uchiha to conclude that the young man in front of him was definitely related to Izuna. Boom! The 2 powerful combination ninjutsu collided in the next moment, and the roar was instantly heard. The water lake under the feet of the 2 people exploded with countless water splashes at this time, like a raging sea. The water surface in the area where the 2 people were located had disappeared, and even because the aftermath of the collision was too strong, the ground below had been exposed. Salamander Hanzo had already experienced the power of Uchiha Izuna, and was worried about the purpose of this trip. Knowing that he could not delay any longer, he bit his finger directly and then quickly made a seal. Psychic summoning technique. Boom! There was a not-so-heavy explosion, and then a huge creature appeared. It was a behemoth over 30 meters tall, with dark skin and a lot of mucus on its surface. There were granular protrusions on its back like a toad, and it looked like a giant salamander, but its body was slightly flat. As soon as it came out, it opened its mouth and spit out a purple protrusion towards Ishigamihara. Wherever it passed, the water was polluted into lavender, and the trees contaminated by the poison gas withered in an instant, which showed how toxic it was. This kind of powerful toxicity was something that Uchiha Izuna would not dare to try easily. The next moment, a lavender half-body appeared outside of Ishigamihara, with clear ribs, and then muscle patterns grew on the ribs, and finally half of the body was in armor, holding a chakra-long sword, and was cautious. Uchiha Madara was a little out of control at this moment, because the previous scene shocked him, because the half of Susanoo was exactly the same as Uchiha Izuna in both appearance and color. How is this possible? How is this possible? Is this some kind of secretary in Konoha? Is this the impure world reincarnation? No, that's not right, it's not the impure world reincarnation, but, then what is it? Uchiha Madara fell silent. Amaterasu. With a whoosh, a jet of black flame fell on the water, and it seemed like it was inextinguishable, burning the water as well, not to mention the poisonous gas that was already attacking Ishigamihara. The giant salamander-like creature, the salamander, seemed to be very afraid of the dark flames. After the flames appeared, it paused to raise its head and roar. Sensing the emotions of the summoned beast under him, the salamander Hanzo frowned and looked at the equally huge bust in front of him. He felt the pressure suddenly increase. Yes, that's it, the ultimate power of the Uchiha clan, the monster called Susanoo. The salamander Hanzo formed seals with both hands and stomped his foot down. The salamander under him also tensed up at the same time. The next moment, the salamander suddenly opened its mouth and spewed out a huge amount of dark purple venom. Water escape technique. Mist transformation technique. He opened his mouth and blew out a cloud of white smoke-like gas, which merged into the deep purple venom of the salamander. The latter suddenly sublimated rapidly as if it was boiling, and in an instant it turned into a larger purple mist rising up. Retreat quickly. Seeing this, many mist ninjas who were watching gave orders immediately, and then they acted quickly one by one, leaving this dangerous place. As subordinates of Hanzo, they naturally knew the horror of their leader's attack this time. It was a deadly poison that could kill everything, and nothing could stop it. Swish, swish, swish. Many mist ninjas hurriedly evacuated, fearing that they would be affected if they ran too late. Almost in an instant, only the two hostile parties were left in the field. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The huge bust of Susanoo was shrouded in poisonous fog at this moment, and the chakra on its surface felt corroded, making a hissing sound. Even the purple poison, in some form, seemed to be entering the bust of Susanoo along with the chakra. Seeing this scene, Ishigamihara's eyes were stern, and he controlled Uchiha Izumina, who made Ishigami Uehara's body, seemed to have expected this to happen, and his expression became much more serious. He was seen making seals with his hands, and his figure suddenly rose. The Susanoo, which was originally only in a half-body state, quickly had armor made of chakra on its body surface to resist the invasion of the poisonous fog from the outside world. Looking around, there was fog all around. In nearby places, bubbles had begun to emerge from the water surface at some point. After the bubbles burst, purple poisonous fog was also splashed out. In other words, everything visible to the naked eye in this area has been contaminated with poison. Whoosh! A flame suddenly rose up, like a pillar of fire that shot up into the sky, starting from the huge bust of Susanoo and spreading to the surroundings. Until this moment, the voice of Ishigami Uehara was heard from the pillar of fire. Fire style. Burning tornado wave. This is a fire style ninjutsu that the Uchiha clan is good at. It is mostly used to deal with people from Kurigakure. It is just right to use it at this time. The wave of fire broke through the poisonous fog, followed by a blazing flame falling from the sky. To be precise, it was a long sword condensed by chakra and flames, held by the Susanoo bust and chopped. Under the huge wind pressure, it directly split the poisonous fog, and the huge blade also chopped towards the salamander Hanzo at the same time. The response of the salamander Hanzo was very simple. While controlling the salamander to retreat, the summoned beast salamander flicked its tail and whipped a huge rock out of the water. The diameter of the boulder was no less than 10 meters, and with a roar, it rushed straight towards the Susanoo bust like a cannonball. The battle here was extremely fierce, but Uchiha Madara, who was hiding in the dark, could no longer control his shock at this moment. He stared at the Susanoo bust, the three magatama in his eyes spinning rapidly, and his face was struggling. It's Izuna, that's right, it's really Izuna. In his excitement, even his own chakra fluctuated rapidly. Among the two people fighting in the field, Ishigamihara paused as he was about to make a move. Confusion flashed in his eyes, but was soon replaced by ecstasy. He subconsciously turned around and looked in one direction. Ishigamihara, no, to be precise, it was Uchiha Izuna who was controlling Ishigamihara's body. At this moment, his sight passed through the battlefield and met the sight of Uchiha Madara hiding in the dark. He saw the pair of scarlet Sharingan and the face that he was very familiar with. Big brother. The voice stopped abruptly the moment he shouted. Boom. The boulder directly hit the Susanoo bust, knocking the latter dozens of meters away before stopping. The Susanoo bust flickered because the control of the body was forcibly taken away by Ishigamihara, and Uchiha Izuna's chakra was also cut off. Whoosh! The Susanoo bust on the body completely disappeared, revealing Ishigamihara himself. At this time, Ishigamihara's brows were furrowed, and his expression was solemn. No, brat! Uchiha Izuna roared like crazy in Ishigamihara's mind. Hurry, go find him, that's my eldest brother, definitely my eldest brother, he's not dead yet, ha 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 ha. My eldest brother is still alive, ha 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 ha. Then there was a series of crazy laughter, which showed how excited Uchiha Izuna was at the moment. Even though his chakra was cut off by Ishigamihara, chakra was still flowing out of his body. Ishigamihara didn't care about it at all. He flashed and retreated in another direction. Where do you want to escape to, kid? But Hanzo would not let go of this good opportunity, thinking that it was because Ishigamihara's chakra was running out, and now was the right time to chase him. Humph! Ishigami Genju snorted coldly, ignoring everything else, and clasped his hands together, and the chakra in his body also exploded at this moment. Wood release. Birth of the tree world. Crack, crack, crack. There seemed to be a moment of stillness in the field, but in the next moment, countless tree branches and seedlings broke out of the ground, as if stimulated by the eyes, and grew wildly at an incomprehensible speed. The branches turned into thick wood in an instant, winding and twisted, growing wantonly. In just a breath, they grew from seedlings into towering trees, and the growth did not stop at all. The fog around seemed to have become the nutrients for these countless trees at this moment. From the original thick to gradually thin, the whole process did not last more than 3 seconds. Ishigamihara stood on the thick wood, his figure rose as the trees grew, looking down at the salamander Hanzo in front of him, and the summoned beast salamander tied up by countless trees. His expression regained composure again. This is impossible. Hanzang's eyes widened with anger, and at this moment he felt more panic in his heart. How could it be wood release? Impossible. Uchiha Madara, who was hiding in the dark, was also shocked, but at this time, Uchiha Madara had an extremely gloomy expression. Chapter 71. Wood release, a bloodline limit, has a special status in the ninja world. Anyone who has heard of wood release will probably have similar thoughts when they actually see the scene after it is performed. How to deal with it? This is what Hanzo Salamander is really thinking at the moment. It is because wood release represents Hashirama Senju, the power used by the god of ninja to pacify the ninja world. It is a power that is out of reach for anyone, especially a powerful existence like Hanzo Salamander. Being able to be called the demigod of the ninja world, Hanzo Salamander is undoubtedly powerful, but as powerful as he is more aware of the gap between himself and the legendary person. And now, the power belonging to that person is vividly displayed before his eyes. At this moment, within a radius of 2 kilometers, it has been covered by a dense forest. The vegetation in this forest is extremely lush, especially the various thick trees that are winding and twisted, like long dragons, showing unparalleled vitality, which is extremely shocking. Under this kind of power, even the salamander Zhang was also shocked and could not control himself. No, Hanzo of the salamander shouted, with a feeling of wanting to tear his eyes apart, especially under his perception. Nearly half of the many men he brought with him were killed in this forest. If you look closely, it is not difficult to find that among those rough woods, there are places stained with blood from time to time, or some places have rotten meat-like residues, which is palpitating. It was originally a forest full of vitality, but at this moment it has become a death hell that harvests lives, which is enough to show the horror of this technique. Ishigamihara looked down from a high place, clasped his hands together to maintain the circulation of chakra, ignoring the crazy shouting of Uchiha Izuna in his mind, just glanced at Hanzo of the salamander and looked in another direction. There, a figure that originally existed has disappeared, and it is unknown when it happened, but Ishigamihara knew it in his heart. The person he saw just now must be Uchiha Madara, otherwise Uchiha Izuna would not be so excited. Little boy, go find him. Uchiha Izuna was still yelling in his mind, and his emotions seemed particularly excited, as if he wanted to snatch control of Ishigamihara's body right now so that he could go to see his brother whom he missed day and night. But Ishigamihara's response to this was quite cold, and he didn't even respond, and then he retracted his gaze. Ishigamihara didn't know why Uchiha Madara came here, but one thing was certain, it must be related to himself. In this case, Ishigamihara only needed to wait and didn't need to do too much. Feeling that more than half of the chakra in his body had been consumed, Ishigamihara felt a little helpless. Even if he had learned wood release, his chakra was still not as good as Hashirama Senju's. The gap between the two in this regard was still huge. So Ishigamihara just wanted to get rid of the enemy in front of him at the moment, whether it was kill or repel, as long as the mission is completed. In the field, the Rain Village side was already scared out of their wits. The soaring growth of the wood release forest had terrified the Rain Village ninjas since the moment it appeared. There was even a moment when they thought that the god of the ninja world was reborn. Ishigamihara stared at the salamander Hanzo in the distance below with an indifferent expression. For some reason, at this moment, Ishigamihara inexplicably felt some changes in his eyes. This change was a little hard to explain, but if you feel it carefully, you can feel it accurately. To be specific, when Uchiha Izuna was controlling his body to fight, Ishigamihara felt the eye technique belonging to Uchiha Izuna. It's not quite accurate to say that he felt it. The correct statement should be that Ishigamihara mastered it. Ishigamihara is now this feeling. In addition to his own Ushikami and Kakushikami, he has two more eye techniques, one is Amaterasu, the other is Mitsukami. The former is Amaterasu's black flame, and the latter is an eye technique that controls the body with the mind. Specifically, when the body is damaged, the mind can be used to replace the conversion, and when the mind is damaged, the body can be used to supplement it. It is an extremely practical eye technique, which is somewhat similar to Kakushikami's damage transfer. The difference is that Kakushikami can replace his own damage with illusions into different realities to complete the damage transfer. Mitsukami can only use his own mind and body as the conversion target, which is less applicable than Kakushikami. As for why Uchiha Izuna, who possessed Mitsukami, died at the hands of Senju Tobarama, it can only be said that Senju Tobarama is too familiar with Uchiha Izuna. Chia. To be precise, it was Senju Tobarama who was too familiar with Uchiha Izuna's weakness. Ishigamihara had also asked Uchiha Izuna why he died, but it was clear that Uchiha Izuna would not answer this question for Ishigamihara. The fact was that at this moment, it was a reverse scale that could not be mentioned for Uchiha Izuna. If you look closely at this moment, you can find that Ishigamihara's left eye has changed significantly from the past. The base color of his left eye is still pure white, which looks like a white eye, but outside the pupil, the part that belongs to the iris, has a dark triangular lock pattern, which is the legacy of Uchiha Izuna's pupil power. And this legacy of pupil power is now actually mastered by Ishigamihara. It is incredible to say that even Ishigamihara finds it hard to believe at this moment. Therefore, Ishigamihara moved his mind, and the pupil power of his left eye was activated, releasing a pupil technique towards Hanzo of the salamander. Swoosh! Without any hesitation, Hanzo retreated instantly. At that moment, he saw a dark flame appear at the original position. Roar! The huge salamander felt the burning pain on its head. It struggled hard and shook its head, but it seemed to be of no use. The black flame was like a maggot on its tarsal bones, burning the salamander's head all the time. Seeing this scene, Salamander Hanzo clenched his fists. Without any delay, Hanzo could only strike hard, cutting off the flames on the top of the fish's head, along with a large piece of flesh and blood. Roar! The salamander felt even more pain, and twisted its huge body wildly, as if trying to relieve the pain. HMPH! Salamander Hanzo snorted coldly, staring at Ishigamihara, and formed a seal with his other hand to cancel the summoning technique. The salamander dissipated into white smoke with a bang and disappeared. At this moment, Salamander Hanzo stretched out his hand into the forest where the tree world was born, and he could already feel the specialness of the forest. His own chakra began to disappear faintly, as if there was something special around him that was devouring his chakra. The tree world is actually more used to trap and search for the enemy. The technique is activated by the chakra of the caster. When the chakra is cut off, the forest formed by the technique will still absorb energy from the outside, but the energy needed at this time needs to be provided by other people, and this provider undoubtedly it is the enemies trapped in it. No matter from which aspect, the tree world advent is an incredible ninjutsu, especially the wide range of the technique. In the past, when Hashirama Senju performed this technique, it basically meant the end of a battle. At this moment, this kind of thing is also true for Ishigamihara. Salamander Hanzo has already thought about retreating, knowing that if this battle continues, it is impossible to win. Not to mention the heavy casualties, the summoned beast was also seriously injured. Although he did it himself, the defeat is already decided and there is nothing he can do to save the situation. Especially at this moment, he himself is still trapped in it and the crisis has not been resolved. If he does not leave, the consequences may be even more serious. I'll remember you, kid. After saying that, Hanzo of the Salamander raised 2 fingers, obviously planning to evacuate. But Ishigamihara would not let him do as he wished. The pattern in his right Sharingan rotated rapidly, and the Utokina had already started silently. Hanzo of the Salamander's expression changed, and his body suddenly shifted to one side. Ishigamihara frowned, then relaxed his brows, and felt a slight soreness in his right eye. At some point, a piece of flesh and blood appeared in his hand, but it was not Hanzo of the Salamander's heart, but a large piece of flesh and blood on his chest and left arm. Looking at Hanzo of the Salamander again, his body had just stabilized, and he groaned. A large piece of flesh and blood from his left chest to his shoulder had disappeared, revealing the sternum and a large piece of shoulder blade on his chest, and blood flowed down. The next moment, in the hands of Hanzo of the Salamander, with a painful look on Hanzo's face, his body exploded with a bang and disappeared into white smoke. Seeing this, Ishigami touched his right eye slightly. The consumption of his pupil power at that moment was a bit intense. Ushikami failed, but it can also be said that he succeeded. The failure was due to the sudden reaction of Hanzo of the Salamander. The special induction after a long battle saved his life and allowed him to avoid the inevitable death of Ushikami at the last moment. The success was because when Ishigami saw Hanzo of the Salamander's reaction, he activated his pupil power and forcibly used Ushikami, who had already failed, so that he could tear off such a large piece of flesh and blood from his chest. All in all, Hanzo of the Salamander was seriously injured, but in fact he did not suffer too much loss. It was nothing more than the consumption of some chakra and the loss of some flesh and blood. It's just that, with his identity, he has many ways to recover. But he was unexpectedly decisive, and he left very decisively. The method he used was beyond Ishigamihara's expectation. It was reverse spiritualism, which was really unexpected. Shaking his head, Ishigamihara looked in the direction he came from, and his figure flashed, and he disappeared from the spot. After Hanzo of the Salamander left, those rain-hidden ninjas who were lucky enough not to die in the birth of the tree world also fled early. In this regard, Ishigamihara did not choose to pursue. He wanted to kill all the scattered and fleeing cloud-hidden ninjas by himself. Ishigamihara could do it, but it was not wise. What if Hanzo of the Salamander made a comeback and raided the Konoha camp when Ishigamihara was chasing these people? Wouldn't Ishigamihara's actions today be in vain? It wasted effort. Although Hanzo of the Salamander walked decisively and seemed to be seriously injured, this man obviously still had some strength left. The title of demigod in the ninja world was not for nothing. With that kind of injury, even a normal Jonin would have certain means to temporarily suppress it. Therefore, it was necessary to let those people escape. He made a few gestures from a distance, which were Konoha's unique communication gestures. Sure enough, within a few breaths, several figures landed not far away and came out, and then soon came in front of Ishigamihara. Among the people who came were Orochimaru and Nawaki, with 2 ninja teams totaling 10 people. After these people arrived, they all looked at the huge forest in disbelief, especially Nawaki, who looked at Ishigamihara with disbelief in his eyes. This is wood release. My grandfather's wood release. It's no wonder that Nawaki would react like this, wood release. That is the power he has dreamed of since he was a child, but now it appears in a person who is not a senju. Even though Nawaki has repeatedly overestimated Ishigamihara's strength, he never thought that one day he would see wood release reappear from him. The expressions of the others were actually similar. After being shocked, they reacted with ecstasy. Haha, it's wood release, it's really wood release. Unbelievable. The power of the first generation adults appeared again. Konoha will definitely win. Orochimaru licked his lips, looked Ishigamihara up and down carefully, and his voice was full of surprise. You are worthy of being you, Hara-kun. You can always shock people, and this time is no exception. Ishigamihara shook his head, his expression normal. It's a pity that Hanzo of the Salamander escaped. Orochimaru's face froze slightly, and then he recovered. He is Orochimaru, one of the 3 ninjas, and he is the ninja who escaped from Hanzo of the Salamander. The 3 ninjas are the titles left for the 3 people by Hanzo of the Salamander after Hanzo of the Salamander spared their lives. It seems glorious, but it is actually a shame. But the Ishigami Hara in front of him made Hanzo of the Salamander have to take the initiative to escape. The comparison between the two is self-evident. Chase it. After a long silence, Orochimaru gave this order dryly. Immediately, the 2 team members brought by Orochimaru responded in a low voice, disappeared one by one, and chased after Yuyan's retreating party. With such a victory, it is natural to pursue further. Even if there will not be much military exploits, what should be done must be done. This is a major event to inspire the morale of the people and cannot be sloppy. On the other hand, Orochimaru and Naoki were a little silent at this moment. The former was because of Ishigami Hara's words. After comparing himself, he found that he, the senior, seemed to have nothing to praise in front of him. The latter was more frightened by the huge forest and rough wood. He was still in shock. This shock also contained some bitterness that ordinary people could not understand. Why was it not himself who awakened the wood release? He is the grandson of the 1st generation and the heir of the Senju clan. As if sensing the emotions in Naoki's heart, Orochimaru patted Naoki's shoulder gently, but did not say much. On the other side, Ishigami Hara looked at the low-spirited Naoki and smiled slightly. Rope tree. The latter looked up, looking a little bewildered. Are you envious? Ishigami Hara asked. What? Shangshu was startled, and then his expression became a little vague, and his words were not so firm. How could that be? No, I'm just happy for you. Want to learn? I'll teach you. Ishigami Hara's next words startled Orochimaru and Naoki, especially the latter, who widened his eyes in disbelief. Really? Ishigami Hara smiled and nodded. Orochimaru smiled and couldn't help licking his lips. He patted Nawase's shoulder again, and didn't say anything again, but this time the meaning was completely different. After Nawase reacted, his expression was very surprised. Are you serious? Ishigami Hara nodded again, and then said, I have mastered wood release. This bloodline is no longer a secret to me. He glanced at Orochimaru, and then stared at Naoki and said, you have the bloodline of the 1st generation, and you have the 5 attributes of talent. Although it is difficult to learn wood release, it is not impossible. Orochimaru's smile faded. He could feel the meaning of Ishigami Hara's gaze. He was silent for a moment, and then turned his eyes to the side. Ishigami Hara's meaning was very simple, that is, to tell Orochimaru clearly that he could not learn wood release bloodline, at least not at this stage. Do you want to master wood release? Of course he wants to, at least Orochimaru does at this stage, but his identity does not allow him to have too many ideas at this time. Thinking of this, Orochimaru couldn't help feeling helpless. It was really despicable for him to be seen through by a young man. That's great. Shangshu was extremely excited, grabbing Ishigami Hara's shoulders and jumping up and down, revealing the nature of a young man. In the darkness of a valley, there was a loud roar, and a man was seen smashing the big rock beside him, letting the stone chips fly everywhere. His eyes were bloodshot, with anger and anxiety in them. This person is naturally Uchiha Madara, who left the battlefield early. He came here to see Ishigami Hara, a special existence who opened the dual bloodline of the Byakugan and Sharingan. Unexpectedly, he saw an incredible scene from him. His younger brother Izuna is on that person. With Uchiha Madara's vision and knowledge, even if he doesn't know what happened, he will not mistake the power of his younger brother Uchiha Izuna. The one who fought with Hanzo of the Salamander at first was definitely Izuna, not the boy. But in the end, the moment Uchiha Madara looked at each other, Izuna disappeared. No, to be precise, Izuna was deprived of control of the other's body. It was from that moment that Uchiha Madara was truly certain that at the last extreme of the eye contact, the solemnity revealed in that look, it wasn't Izuna, but the boy himself. In other words, his brother's soul was trapped in the body of the other party by some unknown method, and he could also drive the other party's power. This was unacceptable to Uchiha Madara. For a moment, Uchiha Madara wanted to stand up directly, but he held back. For the sake of his own plan, Uchiha Madara did not act rashly. But the more he did this, the more angry he became, like a heart-eating fire, burning him as if his internal organs were smoking, and he was furious. No one could understand the relationship between Uchiha Madara and his younger brother Izuna. It was a strong family affection and bond that came from fighting together and supporting each other. It was a sincere relationship that would not allow others to taint. But now, Izuna, who died for Uchiha, was trapped in the body of that little devil, like being trapped in a prison. How could he accept this? By Zetsu. With a light shout, a pale figure stumbled over from the side. Master Madara, I didn't provoke you, please don't kill me. White Zetsu yelled. Shut up. Uchiha Madara suddenly turned around and stared at White Zetsu, who quickly covered his mouth. Taking a deep breath, Uchiha Madara said in a heavy voice, go find the location of the 2 Jinchuriki of Iwagakure and come back to tell me. Then go give a gift to Hanzo, give him the flesh and blood. Yes, mister. And, Uchiha Madara looked at the sky, suppressed his anger, took a deep breath and pondered for a while, then said, pass the information here to the people of Kumogakure and I will go to Kurigakure in person. Hehe, Master Madara, if this happens, won't Konoha be in trouble? Zetsu asked with a smile. To do. I understand, Master Madara. White Zetsu took the order and left, jumping up and down. Uchiha Madara glanced at the direction of the battlefield again, and the 3 Magatama in his Sharingan turned slightly, and then his figure flashed and disappeared. A moment later, a figure appeared here, with long fiery red hair fluttering in the wind, and 3 Magatama in his left eye looming, and then condensed into a triangular lock pattern, and then stabilized. Sure enough, he has left. In his body, Uchiha Izuna's chakra was vibrating, because Uchiha Izuna felt the special remnant of the aura here, which was the aura of his brother Uchiha Madara. Don't worry, I will let you meet, but not now. Ishigamihara looked in a direction, which should be the direction where Uchiha Madara left, but he did not intend to continue chasing. In addition, thank you for the power you brought, I will cherish it. While speaking, the pattern in the Byakugan completely disappeared, as if it had never appeared. No matter how Uchiha Izuna's chakra was agitated, it had no effect at all. As for the various voices of Uchiha Izuna in his mind, Ishigamihara simply chose to ignore them. If the relationship between Ishigamihara and Uchiha Izuna had been stable before, then after this incident, Ishigamihara no longer had the same attitude towards Uchiha Izuna as before. Instead, he regarded her as an unstable factor and became alert. Ishigamihara's methods included but were not limited to cutting off the connection between her chakra and her body, and using sealing techniques to completely seal her chakra, and by the way, cutting off her 5 senses, completely sealing her with herself as a container. Uchiha Izuna is now unable to sense the outside world, and is even less able to observe the outside world through Ishigamihara. Except for still existing in Ishigamihara's body, he is basically no different from a dead person. As for why Ishigamihara didn't expel her completely, it's very simple. Ishigamihara just wanted to wait for the day when this person could be useful. Calm down, there will be a day when you and Uchiha Madara will meet, but when that day comes, I hope you won't hate me. After saying this, Ishigamihara completely severed the last trace of chakra between him and Uchiha Izuna. You'll regret this, kid. The sound stopped abruptly, and the noise in my ears finally stopped. Shaking his head, Ishigamihara looked in that direction, his eyes flickered a few times, and then he turned and left. After a great battle, the dejected atmosphere in the Konoha camp was immediately cleared, and everyone recognized Ishigamihara, a young man who had a great reputation in Konoha. It was because Ishigamihara used wood release on the battlefield, which was the blood of the first Hokage and the power to quell the unrest in the ninja world. His appearance here at this time gave people a sense of shock, and also brought confidence to the people of Konoha. Wood release is equivalent to victory, which is basically a fact recognized by Konoha and even the ninja world. Ishigamihara naturally felt the eagerness in the eyes of others when they looked at him. If it were not for his special identity, I am afraid that everyone in Konoha would want to come forward and have a good exchange with him. The time came to 6 days later. During this period, Ishigamihara led a team to undertake patrol work to ensure that Yuyin would not attack again. Although anyone with a discerning eye can see that Yuyin has been powerless after the last battle, it is necessary to take precautions. What really made Konoha alert was the threat from Iwagakure. The war here could not be kept secret. With such a large forest, anyone who was not blind would be able to see it. If Iwagakure and Omegakure joined forces due to the heavy losses of Omegakure, it would not necessarily be a good thing for Konoha at this time. Therefore, during the patrol missions in the past few days, Ishigamihara and the team members focused more on Iwagakure. There were no accidents in the 6 days, and everything seemed very calm. However, Ishigamihara felt that this was the calm before the storm. There was a heavy pressure brewing in secret, and no one knew what would happen next. In the camp, Jiraiya had recovered a lot and was now out of bed and walking around. I believe that he would be able to recover his combat power in a few days. As for Tsunade, after learning that Ishigamihara had awakened wood release, she finally reacted. Although she was not fully excited yet, she found Ishigamihara as soon as possible. Lady Tsunade, take a good rest. Leave the war to us. These were Ishigamihara's original words. He did not talk to Tsunade for too long, but just made a promise to her. I will try my best to teach Nawaki the wood release, just like how Grandma Mito taught me the sealing technique. Even if there is a 1 in 10,000 chance, I will make sure Nawaki can master the wood release. Tsunade was naturally moved. She was not familiar with Ishigamihara. She had only heard of his existence in the past. But when Ishigamihara entered the battlefield and fully demonstrated his talent, Tsunade knew that Ishigamihara would be a powerful figure in the ninja world in the future. It was a great thing for Konoha and Nawaki personally that her brother could become friends with such a powerful ninja. As a sister, she was naturally happy to see it. This was also human nature. But Tsunade-sama, there is one thing you need to plan for as soon as possible. Tsunade was puzzled, but still asked solemnly, just tell me, don't be shy. Ishigamihara told her about his experience on the way to the front line of the sand village with Nawaki. As expected, Tsunade immediately frowned, and there was a hint of obvious anger on her face. I understand. Don't tell anyone about this. I will take care of it. The conversation between the two ended here. Ishigamihara was trying to flatter certain people in the village. Tsunade also knew what Ishigamihara meant, but she didn't mind going back to express her thoughts. That was enough. Ishigamihara did this not without special intentions. His idea was actually very simple. After agreeing to Uzumaki Mito, Ishigamihara began to deliberately strive for reputation for himself in the village. Reputation may seem insignificant, but it is still very useful for people who are in a certain political system. Uzumaki Mito hoped that Ishigamihara could establish a complete bond with the village, and Ishigamihara had no intention of betraying Konoha, so it became inevitable for him to gain enough benefits for himself. The bond with the village bonds can be established, but Ishigamihara does not intend to establish bonds with the village as a person of lower status. If there is a choice, Ishigamihara would rather be the chess player. It is a very simple and straightforward truth. Whether it is the Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen or other advisors in the village, they all think that sending Ishigamihara to the battlefield is to train him into a qualified ninja and hone him into an obedient knife. However, little did they know that they released a real dragon that could change the situation in the ninja world. When Ishigamihara returns to Konoha with unparalleled reputation, I think the expressions of some people in the village will be very interesting. To accomplish all this, great strength is needed, and Ishigamihara is not lacking in strength now, and he has not yet fully grown. His potential is unparalleled. All of this started with the war to defeat Iwagakure. Yes, after half a month of silence, Iwagakure finally couldn't hold back and took action. Just as Ishigamihara expected, Iwagakure and Yugakure joined forces, and a full-scale war was about to break out. And on this day, Ishigamihara walked out of the camp. The land of earth is in the north, the land of rain is in the west, and the power of Konoha is now concentrated on the east side of the land of rain. If Iwagakure and Omegakure cooperate, they can go south and bring great pressure to Konoha. Not to mention that there is also the Cloud Village ready to move, the pressure on Konoha can be imagined. Now for Konoha, for the Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, the most important thing is to preserve the results of the First Ninja World War and ensure that they can still maintain their position as the number one in the ninja world, so war is inevitable and winning is the only option. To be precise, the pressure faced by the forces of Konoha in the Land of Rain is definitely greater than that faced by the Sand Village. This requires someone to stand up at this time to resist the confluence of Iwagakure and Amegakure. There is no doubt that the only one who can do this at this moment is Ishigamihara. After all, with the Byakugan and Sharingan, plus the awakening of Wood Release, Ishigamihara's combat power is undoubtedly strong. Even though Ishigamihara is still a teenager and has not really grown up, he still has to shoulder this responsibility. For others, this huge pressure may cause them to lose their balance. But in Ishigamihara's view, this time point and external environment are exactly what he wants. The actions of Rain and Rock Village were very fast, and the battle broke out very directly. Both of them were aiming to defeat Konoha in one fell swoop, so their attacks were very fierce at the beginning. On the east side of the Rain country, more than 10 kilometers away from the Konoha camp, the battlefield was covered with smoke and dust. Water style. Water Dragon Bullet Technique. Earth Escape Earth Flow Wall. Fire style. Great Fireball Technique. Various ninjutsu were flying, roars and sounds of fighting were heard, the battlefield was noisy, everywhere was the light brought by ninjutsu, or bursts of roars, mixed with the wailing of death. This was not the first time that Iwagakure and Yugakure attacked. Within 5 days, the two organized 3 consecutive attacks, and each one was more fierce than the last. Until this time, Iwagakure even released a big killer. Roar. A thunderous roar shook the 4 directions, and a huge monster suddenly appeared on the battlefield. It was a huge creature with a body as red as fire, like an ape, more like a gorilla, with 5 thick tails behind it, a mouth full of fangs, a hideous face, and it was beating its chest and roaring to the sky. That is, a tailed beast. How could it be? On the battlefield, the ninjas of Konoha were in high spirits, but when they saw the appearance of the tailed beast, their faces suddenly changed. The tailed beast represents destruction and death. Its huge body, terrifying chakra, and powerful ability are definitely not something that a single ninja can match. Seeing this, the ninjas of Konoha were filled with fear. It's the 4 tails, why is it here? As the battlefield commander, Orochimaru's face changed after seeing this scene, and he was extremely angry. Are you going to retreat, Orochimaru? On the side, Jiraiya, who had recovered a lot, stood beside him, also looking at the tailed beast with a serious look. Orochimaru looked very solemn, gritted his teeth slightly, but still shook his head. No, with Hara-kun here, we still have hope. As long as he can hold back the tailed beasts, this battle can still be fought. As soon as the words fell, countless saplings suddenly grew where the 4 tails were, and then grew rapidly, as if time was speeding up. Wood Release. The advent of the tree world. Ishigamihara broke away from the battlefield, faced the powerful pressure of the 4 tails, and performed Wood Release. Crack, crack, crack. Countless thick trees grew up, and in the process of growth, they were like vines, entwining towards the 4 tails. The latter roared and struggled hard. The thick wood was as fragile as a rope under its movements, and it would break if it was slightly broken. But it broke away quickly, and the speed of the trees growing and entwining was even faster. In order to deal with the tailed beasts, Ishigamihara did not care about the consumption of chakra. Fortunately, Wood Release has the ability to know the tailed beasts, especially the powerful Wood Release ninjutsu such as the Tree World Descent, which can absorb the chakra of the tailed beasts to maintain the technique itself, so Ishigamihara's pressure is not too great. But as a tailed beast, it is naturally impossible to be subdued so easily. The 4 tails seemed to have sensed the crisis and opened its mouth wide. In front of it, there were various colors of light condensing, colorful and very magnificent. At this moment, a great pressure emanated from the light group that gradually gathered together. Everyone present was heartbroken, and Orochimaru, who was the commander of the battlefield, was even more shocked. Oh no, it's the tailed beast ball. The ninjas who noticed this, whether they were from Iwagakure, Amegakure, or Konoha, all retreated quickly. Facing the tailed beast ball, no one had the confidence to survive. If the tailed beast ball exploded, everyone present would be affected even slightly, and it would be bad for them. Ishigamihara would naturally not let him do what he wanted. Seeing this, his eyes flashed, and his eyes had changed. His left eye was in a white-based Byakugan state, but there was a triangular lock pattern on the iris. And his right eye was still a blood-red Sharingan, and a Mangekyo appeared, and the pattern in the eye began to rotate rapidly. Amaterasu. A large piece of black flame suddenly appeared in the mouth of the 4 tails. The chakra and natural energy that were rapidly gathering were disordered because of the appearance of the black flame. The burning of the black flame also caused severe pain to the four tails. For a moment, the tailed beast ball, which had already shown a tendency to take shape, suddenly collapsed, causing a large explosion. Boom! The explosion was like thunder, and the four tails suddenly raised its head and let out a tragic roar, as if it had been severely injured. Ishigamihara knew very well that such an attack could not do anything to the four tails, so he maintained the tree realm descent, allowing countless thick woods to bind the tailed beasts, while raising his other hand high. The next moment, the chakra gathered in the palm of his hand, and almost in an instant, a ball of chakra turned into a sphere, and then the sphere expanded rapidly until it expanded to a diameter of nearly 10 meters. Wind style. Super large Recentrican. Zzzzzzz, a high-frequency humming sound appeared, and the huge chakra ball had sharp edges around it, spinning rapidly, just like a shuriken. Ishigamihara had already seen through the essence of the Rasengan series of ninjutsu, so it would not be difficult to master it. It was nothing more than piling up chakra and special property changes, which Ishigami was good at. Without any hesitation, while the four tails had not yet reacted, Ishigamihara directly threw the Recentrican in his hand. The battlefield was still for a moment, and under the gaze of everyone, the huge Recentrican shot out, bringing up a violent wind pressure, and slammed into the four tails. At this moment, a strong wind broke out from the place where the two touched, and a blazing light swept the entire field. The terrible wind pressure turned into sharp blades, and instantly wrapped up the four tails. Roar, roar, roar. The four-tailed beast screamed in pain, and its fur was torn apart, turning into chakra and dissipating in an instant. Boom! Amid the violent roar, the four-tailed beast seemed unable to withstand this shocking blow, and took advantage of the moment when the tree tied to it was destroyed by the spiral shuriken to turn around and flee into the distance. Ishigamihara frowned when he saw this, and although he felt that the four-tailed beast's behavior was strange, he had no time to think about it, and he had to grasp the outcome of the battle, so he hurried to catch up. Boom! 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 The huge four-tailed beast ran, bringing up billowing smoke and dust, and Ishigamihara followed closely behind, not slow, and was not left too far behind. The two, one chasing and the other fleeing, soon left the battlefield, and the four-tailed beast ran for more than 10 kilometers before stopping, turning around to face the chasing Ishigamihara, and his face became even more hideous. Something is wrong. Ishigamihara also stopped, frowning, and then, as if sensing something, he suddenly turned his head and looked in another direction. There, a figure was sitting cross-legged on a huge rock. It appeared at some point, but it seemed as if a figure was there. Uchiha Madara, Ishigamihara called out, his brows furrowed. Uchiha Madara opened his eyes, the scarlet color in his eyes piercing through his hair, staring at Ishigamihara. His face was filled with arrogance, mixed with a strong murderous intent. Little ghost, we finally meet. The four tails, which was originally extremely violent, suddenly became quiet at this time, just standing there quietly, as if it had lost its mind. Ishigamihara took a glance and saw that in its dark eyes, the three Magatama belonging to the Sharingan were looming. It was obvious without any guessing that the four tails was controlled by an illusion. In other words, from the appearance of the four tails to its explosion, and then to its escape, everything was to lure him here. Ishigamihara was a little surprised, but also felt it was natural. If he were Uchiha Madara, he would probably use all his strength to eliminate this unstable factor at this time. Only in this way can he feel at ease. Little boy, do you know me? Uchiha Madara was still sitting cross-legged on the big rock, wearing a red plate armor, with long hair covering half of his face. The plate armor had traces of time, slightly mottled, but with Uchiha Madara's temperament, it was even more fierce. Seeing that Uchiha Madara did not take action directly, and seemed to want to talk to him, the 490 on the stone exhaled lightly, and then raised the corners of his mouth and spoke with a smile. I saw you once during the last battle with Salamander Hanzo. Although I didn't see you at that glance, I recognized your identity, the former Shira of the ninja world, Uchiha Madara. Ha ha ha. Uchiha Madara laughed loudly, as if he had heard something very interesting. Then the laughter suddenly stopped, and he slowly stood up while staring at Ishigamihara. Sure enough, that look, is it Izunai, right? Ishigamihara did not hide it and nodded slightly. It is indeed him. Uchiha Madara did not say anything else, but just stared into Ishigamihara's eyes, as if he wanted to see the same look in his eyes as last time. But he was destined to be disappointed, because the way Ishigamihara looked at him was very calm from beginning to end. You are not him. Uchiha Madara's voice was a little quiet. Ishigamihara looked calm, and he didn't seem to be worried about his situation. He just said lightly, I am Ishigamihara, that's all. Buzz. Uchiha Madara's body suddenly surged with air waves, and a huge pressure spread out from him. It was like a real pressure that acted on Ishigamihara in an instant. It was the spirit of the ninja world. At this moment, Ishigamihara felt like he was facing a mountain, and he seemed extremely small. But he was like a reef in the waves. No matter how strong the wind and waves hit him, I stood still. Kid, you are pretty good. Seeing this, even Uchiha Madara couldn't help but praise him. Ishigamihara slowly drew out the short blade from his waist. The friction between the blade and the scabbard was clearly audible here, as if he was not affected by the opponent's momentum at all. There is no need to say any more useless nonsense. After saying this, he rushed towards Uchiha Madara. Little boy, do you want to dance too? Uchiha Madara crossed his arms over his chest, seemingly not caring about Ishigamihara's performance at all, and even had admiration in his eyes. But the next moment, the knife light from Ishigamihara appeared in front of him. Uchiha Madara narrowed his eyes slightly, and did not see any big movements. He just slightly turned his body to avoid the attack, easily and naturally. The knife light was like a horse, but it suddenly bent at the moment of missing, and went straight to Uchiha Madara's neck. Interesting. After commenting like this, Uchiha Madara finally raised his hand, took a step forward, and his arm blocked Ishigamihara's wrist by a hair's breadth, and his other hand slapped his chest. Ishigamihara's body was shorter than Uchiha Madara's, but similarly, if he wanted to attack Ishigamihara's chest, Uchiha Madara had to bend down, which gave him an opportunity. Ishigamihara's free hand was also stretched out, and it was also formed into a palm, and it slapped together with Uchiha Madara. Snap! The two hands slapped together, and Uchiha Madara's mouth suddenly curled up, and with a force on his hand, he interlocked his 5 fingers with Ishigamihara's and kicked at the same time. Ishigamihara's reaction was naturally not bad. At this moment, he lightly jumped up, and also used force on his hand. He actually used the power of Uchiha Madara to flip over from the top of his head and landed on his side. From beginning to end, the two people's hands never separated. At the moment of falling, they both puffed up their chests at the same time, and then sprayed flames at each other. To read violent novels, go to Philo Novel Network. Fire Style. Great Fire Extinction. The two of them used the same technique at the same time. They were so close that the flames instantly enveloped the two of them. It was during the ups and downs just now that Uchiha Madara used Ishigamihara's hand to complete the seal, and the latter also followed suit and also used Uchiha Madara's hand to complete the seal of this technique. Boom! The explosion sounded, and the flames rose into the sky in an instant, engulfing the two of them. Whoosh! The next moment, 2 figures flew out from the flames, still maintaining the posture of spewing flames from their mouths, and each retreated more than 10 meters. 2 tongues of fire like long snakes and thin lines started from the 2 people, and then turned into raging flames and collided with each other. The flames were like huge waves, surging endlessly, and the collision stirred up high waves, turning into a wall of fire that was more than 30 meters high, as if to burn everything. The flames burned for more than 10 seconds. In other words, the 2 people maintained this technique for more than 10 seconds before stopping. The flames burned the air, causing the air to distort. The big rock at the center of the flames had now turned into lava and flowed out, which shows how terrible the power of the collision of these 2 techniques is. Through the flames, the 2 people's sights collided, and the next moment, the 2 figures suddenly disappeared. Dang! In the flames, 2 figures flew and flashed, as if the picture was skipping frames. Each time they appeared in a different place, but each time they appeared, there would be a burst of sparks. Dang 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 dang, the dense sound of metal clashing like violent drumbeats rang out. It was Ishigamihara's short blade and Uchiha Madara's kunai colliding with each other. The two were engaged in a pure swordsmanship competition. The fancy swordsmanship that was like a show of skill was exactly the same in style. It was fierce and sharp, revealing the ultimate elegance, but it was accompanied by terrible lethality. It seemed that as long as there was a little carelessness, someone would die on the spot. But whether it was Uchiha Madara or Ishigamihara, they were not afraid at all. The two of them were engaged in the most intense collision on the battlefield, and no one retreated. Ha ha ha. Uchiha Madara laughed happily, his long hair flying, his face looking extremely excited. Little boy, I will take care of you. You have passed the Uchiha-style swordsmanship test. Ishigamihara pursed his lips and said nothing. He slashed horizontally with his hand, but his body movements suddenly changed from the original gorgeous to the simple and plain. Every move he made was full of a sense of contradiction, which was perfect but should be like this. This is. Uchiha Madara's eyes were stern, and he naturally noticed the change in Ishigamihara's movements. As time went on, he found that his attacks were actually falling into the opponent's rhythm. How about 0.7? Ishigamihara spoke at this time, looking at Uchiha Madara. His movements were sometimes fast and sometimes slow, his body suddenly stopped from time to time, and then moved quickly, which seemed extremely contradictory but also very suitable for the battle. This grasp of rhythm, you win. Uchiha Madara narrowed his eyes, and of course he would not force himself. He found that his swordsmanship, which he was proud of, was at a disadvantage in this pure competition. He was extremely surprised, but also inexplicably amazed. Monster. Even as powerful as Uchiha Madara, at this moment he had to admit that the monster in front of him was a monster he had never seen in many years. Swish. A blade pierced the air, and at an extremely tricky angle, it slashed Uchiha Madara's shoulder armor, leaving a mark. Whoosh. Uchiha Madara quickly retreated, distanced himself from Ishigamihara, and the smile on his face could not be suppressed. He threw away the broken kunai and clapped his hands. Fire-style Great Dragon Fire Technique. Boom. A fire dragon suddenly rushed out from the ground in front of Ishigamihara, its mouth opened wide, and it bit down on Ishigamihara's head. The dragon's head was more than 10 meters in diameter, and it was really huge. The pressure coming at him made the air around him distort violently, which showed how hot it was. Ishigamihara was not afraid at all. He put the short blade back into the sheath with one hand, and completed the seal with the other hand. Water escape. Violent water waves. He opened his mouth and spit out huge waves, like thousands of troops, roaring and slamming into the huge dragon head. Rumble. In the violent explosion, countless water vapors turned into shock waves and rushed to the surroundings, almost swallowing up Uchiha Madara and Ishigamihara in an instant. Crash. The waves kept rushing, but in just a short moment, they turned this battlefield into a swamp, and even submerged the valley, including half of the mountain. It can be seen how wide the scope of this technique is. Ishigamihara and Uchiha Madara stepped on the water, and their bodies were unstable with the ups and downs of the waves. The two looked at each other from a distance, but their sight was not affected by the fog at all, and they looked at each other. The next moment, the two rushed towards each other again. 23 This time it is no longer a competition of swordsmanship, but pure physical skills. Uchiha Madara has physical skills that allow him to stand at the top of the ninja world. That is a powerful technique that he has forged through countless battles during the Warring States period. Every move is filled with unparalleled murderous intent. The swiftness of his movements and the fierceness of his murderous intent are invincible. Ishigamihara is naturally not bad. With a lot of experience, he has integrated the physical skills of the Senju, Uzumaki and even the 3 Uchiha clans to build his own physical skills structure. His every move is naturally extremely powerful. Every time the two collided, their energy was overflowing, and the water splashed and the waves were endless. In terms of swordsmanship, Ishigamihara can use his unique rhythm to match the physical skills of Uchiha Madara. If a swordsman is strong in suppressing Uchiha Madara, then he will be at a disadvantage in a physical collision. The reason is simple, just because of the height difference between the two. After all, Ishigamihara is still young and shorter than Uchiha Madara. Even if they are equally strong, this difference will give Uchiha Madara a slight advantage every time. This advantage is nothing for others, but for someone like Uchiha Madara, he can seize any opportunity at any time and gradually magnify this advantage until he finally crushes him. This is the ability of the Shira of the ninja world. Ishigamihara naturally noticed this, so after being suppressed by Uchiha Madara with his height again, he simply retreated and left the battle. What's wrong, kid? Don't want to continue? Uchiha Madara was all smiles. He seemed to be very satisfied with the fight just now, and naturally didn't want it to end like this. Ishigamihara stared at him, and then said, "Don't waste time, let's get started." Uchiha Madara heard this, his smile faded, and he looked at Ishigamihara for a moment, then nodded. Okay, come on. The two of them had fought to this point, and they actually knew that both swordplay and physical skills were just tests, and the real battle for them was just beginning. They both put their hands together at the same time, and then shouted. Wood release. The birth of a world of trees. Coincidentally, both of them planned to use wood release to put pressure on the other, but both of them were good at wood release and other ninjutsu. Crack, crack, crack. Countless saplings grew out of the water, swelled in the wind, and in just a few breaths, they grew into towering trees, entwined with each other, like countless vines. The two of them stood on a thick tree, their bodies grew taller as the trees grew, facing each other from a distance. The area within a radius of 4 or 5 kilometers has now turned into a dense forest. This forest is full of big trees, and the trees are overlapping and twisted with each other, with strange shapes. If you look closely, it is not difficult to find that the wood release trees belonging to Uchiha Madara are slightly dark in color. The wood release trees belonging to Ishigamihara are more like tree species that already exist in nature. Both sides are different in this regard. There is a certain gap, which is easy to distinguish. In other aspects, there is no difference between the two. The wood release of both sides is intertwined, which forms this distorted forest. In fact, it is more than that. The trees born from the two tree worlds are still devouring each other's chakra. In this regard, Ishigamihara has a certain advantage. If nothing else, it is only because his wood release is purer, which is derived from the inheritance of Senju Hashirama, and his own awakening of wood release is also due to the chakra of Senju Hashirama. As for Uchiha Madara's wood release, it can only be regarded as mastered due to Hashirama's cells. The essence of it is naturally different from Ishigamihara. To be precise, Uchiha Madara's wood release can reach this level, and it is more the result of Uchiha Madara's forced display of extremely strong chakra. Oh, Uchiha Madara naturally saw this scene, and with a thought, the four tails, which had been standing still in the distance, suddenly opened its mouth. To read the exciting novel, go to Falu Novel Network. A huge amount of chakra quickly gathered, and at the same time attracted natural energy, and quickly condensed into a huge sphere with an 8-to-2 structure. The tailed beast ball had already taken shape, and the speed was much faster than on the battlefield. The next moment, buzz. The air seemed to stagnate for a moment, and then the tailed beast ball shot towards Ishigamihara's position like a cannonball. Wherever it passed, deep gullies were plowed into the ground, and all the trees were turned into dust and disappeared without a trace, leaving only the traces along the way. The next one was a trace as wide as a meter. Even so, it was because the tailed beast ball had not touched the ground. Feeling the terrible pressure, Ishigamihara's expression became solemn. He glanced at Uchiha Madara, and then his mind moved, and the kaleidoscope pattern in his eyes suddenly turned. The next moment, red chakra emerged from Ishigamihara's body, and these chakras turned into skeletons, muscles, and skin. Then, outside the skin, there was an armor shape, cloud shoulders, neck cape, chest guard, waist guard, skirt armor, everything, plus the red tassel on the top of the helmet. A huge armored giant appeared on the battlefield. Seeing this, Uchiha Madara narrowed his eyes slightly. 490. Is Susanoo in his perfect form able to use his Mangekyo to this extent? The next moment, a long sword appeared in the hand of the huge armored giant. He held the sword with both hands and exerted force on his feet, running towards the flying beast Jade. Wow! A red sword light appeared, and Ishigamihara's Susanoo directly hit the beast Jade. The moment the two met, a sword chopped down. Ha! Ishigamihara shouted, the blade flashed like a spear, red as blood. Then, the tailed beast Jade split in the middle, split into two halves, flew from both sides of Susanoo, landed farther behind, and fell on the ground, bursting out two blazing lights. Boom, boom, a violent sound like the collapse of the sky and the crack of the earth came, followed by a terrible gust of wind. After doing all this, Susanoo turned around, raised his hand, and pointed the long sword directly at Uchiha Madara. Ha ha ha! Uchiha Madara laughed loudly, and without any movement, the light blue chakra gathered on his body, and like Ishigamihara, he had a skeleton, flesh, and armor. In less than 2 breaths, a giant as tall as Ishigamihara's Susanoo appeared not far away. The two faced each other from a distance, and the atmosphere was extremely solemn. Come on, kid, kill as much as you want. The next moment, the two Susanoos collided with each other, and a violent roar broke out. The earth shook, the ground rolled, and a terrible wind swept in all directions, like a storm. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.